Good morning, everyone.
Greetings, all colleagues around the world. Thank you so much for your interest in today's event. I would like to describe what's the GloLitter all about very briefly for those who haven't met us yet. I'm Tamara. I am the project manager of the GloLitter Partnership Project with IMO team in London. We have Ada also on the call, on the team, who is supporting us. And today's event is part of our training programs that we are conducting online virtually to make sure we reach out to as many participants as possible. GloLitter Partnership Project started in 2020, and it was seed funded by the government of Norway. And the project is implemented by IMO and FAO together. Today's event, as Ada mentioned, is interpreted into French language. The same event will take place tomorrow, but a different time. We wanted to make sure that our colleagues and partners around the world could join a different time zone that are convenient for them. And I hope you manage to switch to interpretation if you need to. The event will be recorded. If you have any objections, please let us know, but that's for the purpose of enabling other participants that were not able to attend or can attend only partially, being able to come back and listen to the recording. The event today is conducted by Mr. Peter van den Drius. He is our international consultant, expert on port reception facilities in general sea-based marine plastic litter. And he is the author of the guidance on how to develop port waste management plan, among other guidance documents produced under the GloLitter Partnership Project. We shared with you this guidance document before, but it is easily accessible online, and I will ask Ada to drop the link in the chat. We also have this Peter's PowerPoint presentation translated in French that will be also shared with you for future reference. We expect that this training, during this training, our partner countries, representatives of maritime and fishing industry, gain enough knowledge to be able to share this knowledge later on with their colleagues and other stakeholders in the country, as well as in the region. I would also like to emphasize that we shared with you a survey last week to fill out to understand better general knowledge on the issues that we're discussing today. We'll also be sharing a similar survey after this event to see how much the knowledge advanced after the seminar. That's only for our records. It will not be shared with anyone. We just want to keep the database and see how we improve and support advancing knowledge regionally and globally. Thank you so much. Without further ado, Ada, do you have any other logistical points to emphasize, or we can let Peter start?
We can let Peter start.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good luck. Enjoy the webinar. The pleasure meeting you, to see everyone online. Peter, floor is yours. Thank you. You are muted, Peter.
Okay, this should be better now. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Ada. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. My name is Peter van den Drius, and I will try to guide you today, or talk you through the guidelines or the guidance manual that was already developed regarding the development of port waste management plans. I will briefly introduce myself. So I work actually as a policy advisor for the environmental administration in the Flanders region of Belgium. And have been dealing with waste from ships for many years. I also work as an independent consultant, mainly for the IMO. And before this, I have worked as a technical environmental manager for the Port of Antwerp Authority. And before that, I was project officer at the European Maritime Safety Agency. Oh yes, I will try to speak slowly for the interpreters. If I go too fast, please interrupt me, just let me know. And I will share my screen. This should be okay. Ada, is it okay? No? We'll try again.
No, that's fine. That's fine, Peter. It was okay. Go back.
It was okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a slow transmission. Just, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So yes, we have 4 hours in principle. It's always a bit exciting. It's the first time this webinar on port waste management plans. So we'll see how it goes. So actually, I divided this webinar into four main parts. The first part is, well, more or less setting the scene. So I will talk about waste from ships as a source of marine litter, about adequacy of port reception facilities, etc. Because I really think it is important to have a good understanding why this is so important, this collection of waste from ships, and the adequacy, ensuring adequacy of waste reception facilities. The second part is like an introduction to port waste management plans. What is a port waste management plan? Something about legal and policy framework, and very briefly a slide on the management of plastic waste specifically. We plan to have a short break, 10 or 15 minutes, depending on where we are with the timing. The third part is I will guide you through the key elements of a port waste management plan, why they are there, how to get information, etc. And then the final part of the webinar is about related processes, other policy measures, approval process, some models of port waste management plans. I will also explain that to you. And we foresee some time for questions and answers. Maybe I saw on the first slide, the introductory slide, that we can have two Q&A sessions very shortly, maybe one before the break and then another one at the end of the webinar. Okay, this was already actually introduced by Tamara, so we can skip this and then start with what is marine litter, because we talk about it all the time, but we are not always sure what it is. So I looked up the definition that was developed by the UN. So marine litter is any persistent, manufactured, or processed solid material discarded, disposed of, or abandoned in the marine and coastal environment. So actually, marine litter can be anything. It can be, well, you have some pictures there, some examples on the screen. It can be an old recreational boat that has been washed up on shore. Of course, lots of plastic items, an old buoy that is floating around, even some parts of or from rockets that fall from the space into the ocean. So it's really diverse. It can be everything. And where do we find this this marine litter? Because if you would ask someone to explain what is marine litter, then everyone, I guess, would say, well, it's the debris that floats upon the ocean's surface. But actually, it's the minority of the amount of waste in marine litter. It's actually only between 0.5 and 15% of total marine litter that is floating upon the ocean. And another part of the marine litter is floating in the water column. And actually, the majority of marine litter is on the seabed. So that's a bit surprising for many people, but actually the majority is on the ocean's floor. And of course, that depends on the density of the marine litter because, well, of course, I can already say that the majority of the marine litter is plastic. And everyone thinks that plastic always floats, but that is not the case because there are a lot of types of plastic that have a density which is higher than the seawater density. So as a result, it either floats in the water column or sinks to the ocean, and there are some to the ocean's floor. And I give you some examples here, like cigarette butts, for example. It's a bit surprising, but they have a density which is higher than the seawater, so it doesn't stay on the surface. Polyethylene terephthalate, which is quite heavy. So you saw the previous slide with all the bottles on the ocean's floor here. So that is PET, PET. And there are many examples. Fishing gear also is heavy, more heavy than seawater. So it and this also has a huge impact, which I will show you later as well. So there's a lot of debris floating and in the water column. So what happens then is then we come to the so-called plastic soup. You have heard about this already. So of course the Earth is turning, and then you have also the currents in the ocean and the prevailing winds and so on. So actually this works as a giant, how do you call this? So all the plastic waste is being sucked to the same area. For example, this one here in the Pacific Ocean, it's a well-known garbage patch. It was actually the first garbage patch that was discovered in our oceans. So you have all the debris is coming together in the middle of this patch here. And in fact, the name or the terminology plastic soup is very well chosen because if you look at all these patches, there's really like a soup, really. Lots of small pieces, some bigger pieces, some are on the surface, some are a little bit below the surface. So it's really very well chosen, actually. So I was told that if you would sail through a garbage patch, like this plastic soup patch, then you would not see it. But if you would swim in it, then it would look like, more or less like this, really. So it's some people have an idea like these patches are giant islands where you can walk upon, but that is definitely not the case. So this is more like it, really.
Peter,
I have,
sorry, could
yes.
you just a little bit slower, just tiny
Okay.
bit? No, you are doing excellently. Just tiny bit slow, just to have a
Yes.
break between the sentences. Just sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. I will.
Thanks.
Sorry, interpreters.
Thank
Sometimes
you.
I get a little bit carried away in my enthusiasm, and I start speaking quicker. So I will slow down a little bit. Talking about data on marine litter, of course, this is extremely difficult. We don't have exact scientific data on marine litter, but we do have estimates. There are estimates that worldwide there is already more or less 200 million tons of waste in our ocean, and that is extremely difficult to imagine, of course. And every year, there are estimates that 8 to 12 million tons are added. And this equals one garbage truck every minute, every day, every week, every year, one truck per minute. So that's extremely concerning, I would say. Also, it has been found that in some places the sea already contains 26 times more plastics than plankton, and also that is very concerning because plankton is on the bottom of the food chain. So it's really important to have this the marine ecosystem and not only the marine ecosystem. And also another concerning estimate is that by 2050 there will be more plastic in the ocean by weight than there are fish. So that, and 2050 is not so far away. And I already gave it away. The majority of marine litter is plastic. These are data from the OSPAR Commission in the Northeast Atlantic, but this is really representative for the global situation. So where does it come from? Marine litter. Also here there are global estimates. 80%, it may be a bit surprising in a way, but 80% of marine litter is from land-based sources and 20% from sea-based. But again, this is a global estimate, and there are strong regional differences. And in certain areas, all sea-based sources prevail. For example, in the North Sea, it's more like 50-50 land-based and sea-based sources. This is a very interesting graph, I think, because this comes from a large study that was done in 2016 for the European Union. And this graph nicely indicates the different sources of marine litter and also quantifies the sources. So you see here that in total, the amount of plastic entering the marine environment is about 12 million tons per year. And you can see here the sea-based sources. Actually, it's 1.75 million tons, so it's not that much compared with land-based sources. And also, if you look at these sea-based sources, the difference between waste from fishing activities and other shipping activities is also very significant. Fishing activities account for 1.15 million tons, and waste from other shipping is almost half of it. So also here, sometimes this is like a wrong thought that waste from ships is the majority is like bruising and so on, but that is not the case. Actually, from all sea-based sources, fishing activities are the most relevant. Yes, also here this slide indicates that the majority here on the seafloor is, well, according to this these data, it's 94% of all marine litter. So really, that is really a lot. And also this, because you also have heard probably about initiatives that are being taken to take out the marine litter from the ocean. For example, the ocean cleanup. That's an initiative taken by a Dutchman, Boyan Slat, and he has designed these large, how do you see it, devices that float on the ocean and collect the marine litter. And of course, that is a nice initiative, but you only catch a very small amount of the marine litter, and it is extremely difficult to take out the marine litter which is on the seabed. Also, this slide indicates the sources of marine litter. The yellows are land-based and the blue ones are sea-based. So you see here, this is the eastern part of Asia. This is North America. So you see that in Asia, the majority of marine litter more or less is land-based, while looking at the West Coast, the North American West Coast, it's more the sea-based sources that prevail. So depending on where you are, that this can differ. And then talking about sea-based sources, of course, it can be everything. It can be all types of shipping, from the largest vessels to the smallest yachts, and also offshore activities and aquaculture. Of course, it's very obvious. Now we will go a little bit more into detail about or into sea-based sources of marine litter. So the first one I give you here is container loss. Of course, that is something that that happens not that much, but you will be surprised the amount of containers that are lost every year. But when it happens, of course, it's a major source of marine litter. You see here some pictures of like cigarettes and so on and other stuff, but also plastic pellets. That this is really an issue when we talk about container loss. I think 2 or 3 years ago there was a vessel in the Sri Lanka seas which lost some containers, and some of them were containing plastic pellets. You see here the picture on the left below. These plastic nurdles are how they call them sometimes. They are used as a source, a raw material for the production of plastics. And you can see here the picture, all this white here, it's all those beaches were covered in plastic pellets. And that was really a major disaster, which led also to discussions within the IMO about how or about whether we should strengthen the regulations regarding where to put these containers with plastic pellets on the vessel. There were some voices or some opinions saying that actually we should regard these plastic pellets like some type of the hazardous material, and maybe put the containers with plastic pellets more inside the vessels, so that when the containers fall off, that they do not contain these these plastic pellets. But these discussions are still ongoing. Here are some data. As I said, it is a bit surprising because of course, there were some major disasters like here in 2013 and also in 2020. But in average, every year there's about 1,000 containers being lost at sea. So that is, in my view, that is surprisingly a surprisingly high number. Another source or a sea-based or a shipping source of marine litter is the discharge of cargo or washing waters containing cargo. And also here you have an example, these persistent floaters like paraffin, for example, when this, it's in general, when it is being transported, it's a liquid. But if it is discharged or in the ocean, then it solidifies, and it's really very light, so it can move for huge distances. And then you have these the picture on the right here below. These packages of solid material, they wash upon the beaches. So we in Western Europe, especially, this was a problem for many years. But the IMO has also tackled this, and since the beginning of, I think it was 2021, it is no longer allowed to discharge these types of cargo or washing water at sea. So now when a ship transports persistent floaters, then the ship is required, after delivering the cargo, the ship is required to do a pre-wash at the port and deliver the washing waters from these pre-wash to a port reception facility in that port, or the ship is not allowed to leave the port. So I think that is also a very good initiative. Another type of shipping marine litter is the discharge of garbage. Of course, garbage, MARPOL Annex 5, there are very strict discharge requirements in MARPOL, and I will come to that later as well. But in principle, you cannot discharge any garbage unless it is explicitly allowed, and there are only very few types of garbage that can be discharged at sea legally. You see here two pictures. The picture on the left is this is a net that is or was used for cargo, for keeping the cargo in place. This picture was taken near Scotland at a depth of 1,000 meters. And then the picture here on the right, you see, well, you can see what it is. It is a can of Heineken beer. Well, as a Belgian, we don't think this is beer really, but this picture was taken in the Gulf of Biscay near France, and also at a depth of 1,000 meters. And this clearly, you see, it's not even covered with algae. So this was almost certainly dropped from a ship. Another type of marine litter from ships is actually microplastics, something that is not always the first that comes in someone's mind, but microplastics, they of course they are in shampoo, in toothpaste sometimes, and especially on cruise vessels with a lot of people on board, thousands of people. Of course, these microplastics, they end up in the gray water from the vessel, and there are actually no discharge criteria for gray water. So these microplastics, they also end up in the ocean. And even when cruise vessels are equipped with sewage treatment systems, these systems are in general not designed for taking out the microplastics. So that is also a relevant source of marine litter. And also from the hull, sometimes paints, they also contain microplastics, and of course they are being released in the ocean. And then finally, I already spoke about fishing activities as a source of marine litter. This is really an issue. I was also in the GESAM working group working on the report of sea-based sources of marine litter. And there was, although there's not that much scientific data also for this, but in general, there is this agreement that from all sea-based sources, fishing activities is the most relevant. So I give you here some figures about fishing gear lost each year. It's estimated that 5.7% of all fishing nets are being lost. 8.6 of all percent of all traps are being lost. 29% of all fishing lines, and this is a figure that is also extremely big. 740,000 kilometers in total of fishing line would be lost every year, and 14 billion hooks. And when you look at the amount of fishing gear in the total of marine litter, in Europe, we have some data that it is 27% of all beach litter is originating from fishing activities. In the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, 46% of the floating debris would be from fishing. And in the North Pacific, even 90% of the marine debris that was intercepted by longline fishers was ghost gear. So that's really an enormous amount of waste. So now we know where it comes from, and I have a few slides also on the impact of marine litter. To start with, there is a substantial socio-economic impact. You see here some pictures. The two above is where fishing gear ends up in the ship's propeller. And that is not only very costly for the ship owner or ship operator to repair this, because you need divers and it's not always possible to do that. But it's also very dangerous, because a ship on the ocean without any propulsion, that is of course very dangerous. And then another type of socioeconomic impact is of course when in tourist areas, for example, when the litter washes upon the beaches. Of course, tourists don't like that, and it costs a lot of money to clean these beaches every day. And like this example where it is being done mechanically, that's because beaches are also a very vulnerable ecosystem, and if you clean this with heavy machinery and so on, this really disturbs also the ecosystem. And then another example here on the right below is when the debris impacts like power stations, for example, where they use water to cool the facility or the engines and so on. So that can also be very dangerous and costly to remove. Another type of impact of marine litter can be the distribution of invasive species. You see here some examples with mussels connecting to plastic bottles and the packaging. And then actually the picture here on the right with the Nike trainer. This picture was taken here in Belgium on the coast, in the western part of Belgium. And this is from an organization that collects beach litter. And they found this trainer with these types of mussels connected. And they were able to trace this shoe. And actually, it turned out that this shoe was lost on the east coast of the US. So it traveled all the Atlantic to wash up in Western Europe. And you see these mussels in principle, they are not indigenous for Western Europe. So they have traveled all the way from the east coast of the US to Belgium. So this is clearly an example of transfer of species. And then some very depressing pictures, which you probably have seen also. Entanglement, that is very typical also for marine litter. Animals, they when they are small, they put their heads into marine litter, and when they grow, well, you can see what a devastating impact it has on these animals. It's really depressing. I also think that the picture here with the oyster catcher, the bird here, this is really such a stupid example. This type of bird, they put their beaks in the sand to collect food, and this bird has had bad luck and had to died because of it was no longer able to collect food. So this is just and it's not only small animals here. This sperm whale, it's just amazing. There are some videos I could show you where two sperm whales are with their tails in a large fishing net, and it's really terrible to see things like this. Another example, this is specifically called ghost fishing, because when, of course, fishing gear, fishing nets, when they are lost at sea, they continue to do what they are designed for, which is catching fish. And then it can happen that small fish are trapped in these nets, and this then in its turn attracts larger predators, larger fish, and also they get trapped in the fishing gear. So then you end up with examples like here on the slide. It's very depressing also, I think. Another example of environmental impact of fishing gear is ingestion. These pictures, they're not photoshopped. I can assure you that. For example, the bird on the right there, famous picture taken by Chris Jordan. Of course, these plastic items, they have nice color and so on, and sometimes animals think it's food. They eat it, and they die because sometimes they eat so much plastic that the stomach sends a signal to the brain that the stomach is full. But of course, it's not food really. So the animal dies of starvation, or sometimes the plastic causes internal wounds and bleeding and so on. So and another example here on the left, which I wanted to show you, is small plastic bags, because when they float in the water column, these plastic bags, they look like jellyfish. And jellyfish is an important type of food for turtles. And turtles cannot see the difference between plastic bags and jellyfish, and they eat it. And for example, in the Mediterranean Sea, turtles have been picked as an indicator for plastic contamination. So when there are these monitoring programs where scientists from the European countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea, they monitor the stomach content of these turtles. And also the figures are really amazing because the majority of turtles, they have plastic in their stomach. This is also some pictures that this is a bird which is feeding its chick with a cigarette butt. Also very depressing, I would say. And I apologize for these depressing pictures, but pictures say more than words, so I think it's important. And then a last type of impact is so-called smothering. It's when fishing gear is covering coral, and then because of the reduced light and the weight of the fishing gear, the coral reefs, they simply die. Okay, another aspect of marine debris is that it stays a long time in the environment. You have some examples here about different types of plastic and other marine litter and how long it stays in the environment. And you see here, for example, these six-pack holder, 400 years it stays in the environment. A plastic bottle, 450 years. Of course, these are estimates, but still it's really significant. These fishing lines, 600 years. So really, this indicates that plastic litter is in the ocean for a really, really long time. So you could say, well, this is a good thing because this gives us a lot of time to collect this waste. Unfortunately, there is something which is called it's called I forgot the English name, but the macroplastic, so larger parts of plastic, they disintegrate, and they disintegrate into smaller pieces because of the ultraviolet radiation, and also because it's in the ocean, and there's also a physical disturbing impact. And these plastic, which are like hydrocarbons, but long chains of hydrocarbons, they are being cut in smaller pieces. So actually, we say that macroplastic is turning into microplastic. So this is a good example, I think. You see here a plastic bag for being used in a freezer, for example, and you see here that there are parts missing. So probably this piece of plastic has been in the ocean for quite some time now. But I would like you to remember that actually these parts, they are not gone, they are not disappeared, they are just smaller and somewhere else. So these parts have turned into microplastics. They are spreading in the ocean, and it never goes away, really. And here, I hope it works, is a small video, a short video about plankton. So there are two types of plankton. You have phytoplankton, which are like small plants, and zooplankton. And this is zooplankton, small animals, and they feed in the water so they filter the food from the ocean as a food. And what you see here, all these yellow, these green small particles, this is in a laboratory. This is microplastics, and you see here how the microplastic moves okay, it's a replay, that's okay. So the microplastics have been made fluorescent plastic, and it's also being collected in their stomach. Oops. Okay. Oops. Next slide. Yeah. So there have been already some studies also about microplastics, because the plankton, as I said, it's on the bottom of the food chain, and plankton is being eaten by small fish or small animals, and the small animals are being eaten by bigger animals. So you have some kind of accumulation in the food chain. And in Belgium, for example, the University of Ghent, they have done a lot of research about seafood, because we are very fond of seafood, especially mussels. And it was found that there are an average of 190 to 440 microplastics per kilogram of meat. So not the shell, but only the meat of the mussel. And actually the same is for shrimps, for oysters, but also in other types of seafood. Also in fish, for example, microplastics are found everywhere, actually. And what is the impact of the microplastics? We really don't know yet. But what we do know is that animals that contain a lot of plastic in their stomach also contain more chemicals in their tissue. So clearly there is an exchange of chemicals between the plastic and the animal. And we have seen this in birds, we have seen this in fish. So yeah, we can be sure that, and we also have found microplastics in humans. So we know that we contain microplastics, but we don't know the impact, because it's, of course, it's very non-ethical, or let's say it's from an ethical side, it's rather complex to do testing on humans. So we do not know the impact. But also one thing we know is that microplastics really, they attract chemicals, because most of the harmful chemicals, they are hydrophobic. So I'm a chemist from my I have an academic background in chemistry, so I always like to explain this, but these hazardous chemicals, they don't like the water. When they are in water, when they have the opportunity to connect to something solid, then they will do. So microplastics, of course, are very small, but there are a lot of microplastics in the ocean. So it's really a huge surface, a possible surface for hazardous chemicals to connect. So if these microplastics are being ingested, also the chemicals, they are being ingested. So we have to find out what is the impact on humans. Okay, so far for the marine litter. I think we are a little bit over time, but we have still plenty of time, so it should be okay. Now I would like to talk a little bit about why proper ship waste management, or port waste management, if you like, why it is so important. Because when we try to develop port waste management plans and so on, this is all about having waste from ships to land-based facilities. And of course, the first important reason is that there's a legal requirement. There is MARPOL, for example, the International Convention on the Prevention of Pollution from Ships. where there is a clear requirement for states to ensure the availability of adequate reception facilities in the ports. There are also, as I explained, rather strict discharge requirements for ships. So there is almost no possibility to discharge garbage at sea. So as a result, it's important that ships have the opportunity to deliver the waste to shoreside facility. And also MARPOL describes some regulations regarding onboard management of waste. In addition to MARPOL, there can also be regional requirements. For example, the European Union has a directive on port reception facilities. So in EU, member states and ports have to meet these strict requirements. But also regional sea commissions, for example, they can have additional requirements regarding the collection of waste from ships. Also on a national level, there can be requirements. Some countries, they have specific waste strategies, also including waste from ships, or water quality objectives, which have an impact on the delivery of waste from ships. And then finally, also some ports may have specific regulations, for example, on segregating different types of waste. So clearly, this from a legal perspective, it is important to take this into account. Another reason why this is important, I already explained to you. There is a substantial impact on the marine environment linked to illegal, and I put illegal between brackets here because, as I said, there are very few legal options to discharge waste at sea. So this is an obvious reason after what we have seen before. A third reason is that economic growth should not lead to increased environmental impact. As I said in the introduction, I was a technical environmental manager at the Port of Antwerp authority here in Belgium. And we also implemented several strategies and regulations regarding waste, not only waste from ships, but port waste in general. And in our experience, it turned out that after implementing these management practices or regulations, we saw that a more sustainable port is also a more efficient port. So not only from an environmental or sustainable point of view, this waste management is important, but it increased the efficiency of the port in general. What we also have seen the last, say, 10 or 15 years is that the maritime industry, they also have made this switch in mindset, really, that the sustainability issues and environmental issues, they are really important. I read a text some time ago that if you look at the output of the IMO, that the majority of resolutions and so on, they are environmentally oriented, and which in, let's say, 30 years ago, for example, it was really on safety and security and so on. But now this switch has been made for this sustainability. So, and we also note that several of the, for example, big shipping lines, the Maersk and MSC and so on, they really put an effort to this sustainability aspect. And when in Antwerp, for example, we have had these major lines visiting us and really asking, what are you doing as a service for ships regarding sustainability issues? And it's really, it's not that that is impacting the traffic, so that a ship will not go to a certain port because there are no sustainability services, but it does have an impact. So it's maybe a bit bold to say, but sustainability can be a new competitive advantage for ports. So I think it's also from a port authority's view, this is also something to bear in mind. This, for example, is the European Seaports Organization. They do like this environmental survey every 2 or 3 years. And you see here that for 2023, you see that ship waste is on number 6 of the most or let's say the environmental priorities of ports in Europe. But I think it can be transposed generally or worldwide. You see here that ship waste is an important issue. Of course, climate is in the top, air quality, energy. These are the 3 elements that are really important, like the last 5 years. So it's not a surprise that they are on top. But ship waste is here, and also the previous years, ship waste has always been, let's say, a priority for European ports. And then a last reason why I think that proper ship waste management is important is that it is an important step or necessary step in the transition towards a circular economy. With the circular economy, we want to step away from this linear approach where you produce material and then end up with something that you dispose of. So instead, the circular economy tries to recycle and reuse the material at least. And waste, it can be seen as a resource of raw materials. It is a complex resource, of course, but it is a resource, a valuable resource of raw materials. So if you look at ship's waste, garbage here, this graph here is from also the Port of Antwerp. This is the composition of the garbage that has been delivered to port reception facility. And the gray area here is plastic. And in principle, plastic can be recycled rather easily, as long as it is not, the mixture is not too complex. So that is a potential source of raw material. And the blue amount here is mixed waste. So I can imagine that there is a lot of plastic in that amount as well. So if we could take it out there, then it can be recycled. But not only plastics, of course, also paper can be recycled easily, metals, and even e-waste. So also this is why I think it is important to take this in consideration. Then finally, in this first part is about adequacy.
Sorry, Peter. I'm sorry,
Yes?
Peter. Is the interpretation okay? Because I can't hear French.
I'm sorry.
Is interpretation okay? I can't hear French. Ada?
I just heard that. I just listened in. I don't hear them either. Bonjour. Est-ce que vous êtes là? Weird.
Oui.
Ok, parce qu'en fait, on ne vous a pas encore, on ne vous a pas entendu. D'accord. Ok, bien. Ok, pas de souci. Yes, it's
Okay.
functioning now.
I switched to French and I can't hear it.
Oui, oui,
Okay.
moi je vous entends.
Okay, now it's working. Thank you. Sorry. Thanks.
Okay. So yes, I was talking about ensuring adequacy. So of course, when we start talking about port reception facilities, port reception facility can in principle be any facility. It can be fixed, floating, or mobile, and it should be capable of providing the service of receiving waste from ships. So it can be, in practice, it's mainly done by a mobile reception facility, a barge or a truck, or a fixed. And both have pros and cons. For example, a mobile facility, a truck, is relatively cheap. It's you can travel from one side of the port to another very quickly. But the downside is that in general, trucks do not have a big capacity. For example, when it comes to the collection of liquid oily waste, sludge or bilges, then sometimes you need more than one truck or more than one collection from the ship. A barge, for example, is more expensive, but has larger storage capacity. Fixed facility, well, that should not be expensive also if you use skips, for example. And I will give you a lot of pictures, a lot of examples now about port reception facilities. But fixed facilities, they are to be located on a strategic place in the port, because ships will not make a transfer from one quayside to the facility only to deliver the waste. So that is also very important. And what is an adequate facility? That is, of course, also something where there's a lot of flexibility. The MARPOL guidelines, they give an indication about adequacy. There are guidelines for ensuring the adequacy of port waste reception facilities. You have the resolution number there on the slide as well. So in general, it is fair to say that an adequate facility will or is not to cause an undue delay for the ships that are using the facility, and they have to meet the needs of the ships using the facility. In general, there is also, I found in the European directive on port reception facilities, there is also a reference that in order for a reception facility to be adequate, the facility should be available during a ship's visit to the port. For example, when a ship has to wait like half a day for a truck to come alongside, that's not really adequate. It should be conveniently located and easy to use. That's what I mentioned when you have a fixed area or fixed facility. The reception facility should cater for all types of waste streams usually entering the port. What this means is that if you are, for example, a port where it's of course purely hypothetical, but where 90% of the terminals are doing dry bulk cargo, for example, then you don't need facilities for oil tankers, where you often have a lot of liquid oily waste or washing waters containing oil and so on. If you are a fishing port only, then you don't need other facilities for cargo waste and etc. So this is also clearly for the ships that are normally using the port. And finally, an important issue is also that the use of an adequate facility should not cost so much as to present a disincentive to users. So also the cost issue is very important when it comes to reception facilities. There's also reference to the cost, the reasonable cost in the MARPOL guidelines. So I will give you some examples now, some pictures. This is a reception facility in the port of Antwerp. This is actually the biggest fixed facility in Europe. This used to be a dry dock. You can see here on the picture that you have all the storage facilities and treatment facilities located here or built in this dry dock. This seemed to be a good idea when this facility was constructed, but now we know that actually it's not that good, because there's always some water seeping in or leaking in the this area, and it's very difficult to keep the facility to avoid corrosion and so on. And also this facility actually uses, you can see here on the right, they use the barges to go outside in the port and collect the waste from the ships. So do you see a vessel here? But it's not the case that these vessels, they sail to this facility to deliver waste. No, this vessel is here because this facility also does cleaning of cargo holds. So they use barges. This is another example in Sweden, in the port of Gothenburg. This is also a fixed facility, but you see this is not that complicated. You only need a few skips or containers or waste bins, and then to make sure that the waste is collected in a dry area to avoid leakage and so on. This is another example in the port of Antwerp, and another facility which is owned by the Port Authority. Actually, this is a facility used for inland navigation. Important here is that this facility can be closed for not being ships, I mean, because if you would leave this open, there's a lot of littering from other people, and you have here skips and containers for non-hazardous waste, and you also have a small storage area inside here. This is the inside of this facility. This is for hazardous waste. So during opening hours, there's always someone here who collects waste from these vessels and segregates the hazardous types of waste. But when the facility is closed, it can still be used for non-hazardous waste. This is an example in the port of Ostend. You see here also, go to the next slide, only a few skips actually for some of the most available types of garbage. So it's not complicated at all. But what I would like to emphasize here is that these skips are located on a lock. So 95% of the vessels that call the port of Ostend, they have to pass this lock. So of course, then there's some time while the ship is there, then the crew can deliver the garbage to one of these skips. This the picture on the left here is in the port of Bari in the south of Italy, where garbage from cruise vessels is being collected, also with a container which is put there, and then the crew has some time to deliver the waste, and when the ship leaves, the container is picked up. Here on the right, this is on the Cayman Islands, similar. They use just one container where the waste from the ships is put, and then the container is transported to a waste disposal facility. Can be an incinerator or a dump site landfill. This is waste or garbage being collected using a barge. This is also in the port of Antwerp. You see here different types of garbage that are put on this barge. Actually, the the reception facility operator is not very happy with this way, because sometimes when there's a lot of wind, for example, it can happen that sometimes some of the waste falls into the dock, and that is of course something we don't like. This is another example in the port of Rotterdam. This is you can see this is the same vessel. This is like an open barge, and you have different containers or skips for different types of waste. So what happens when a ship wants to deliver waste, you always have one person from this company, from this reception facility operator, which goes on board of the seagoing vessel, and then already does some segregation of waste in different types, and actually throws the waste directly from the seagoing vessel into these open containers. This actually, in my view, is state-of-the-art waste collection. But of course, we are talking about the port of Rotterdam here, largest port in Europe, one of the largest port in the world as well. So there's a lot of ships here. I think more than 30,000 ship calls, seagoing ships calling this port. So you have a lot of waste here, which makes it more, let's say, this really is a business opportunity for private operators. So yeah, it makes it more easy to do this in a cost-efficient way. And of course, this is not always possible in every port, and it's not always necessary to do so as well, I would say. This is more something similar, I would say. This is in the port of Istanbul in Turkey. I saw this picture somewhere, but I don't have more information about the exact way this is being operated. This is something we used to have in our ports here in Belgium as well. This was a small vessel that was used for delivering drinking water to ships, but after that it was used. You can see here some containers on board. This vessel was also used for the collection of garbage, but it's no longer in use. Another example here is a collection by truck. This is a truck used for sludge. And this is the same company. Maybe it's a bit difficult to see, but you see here a barge collecting bilges and sludge from a seagoing vessel. In Antwerp, we have like, I would say 7 or 8 of these barges. We have actually 2 main reception facilities that collect oily waste from ships using a barge. And then finally, some examples in fishing ports, because I remember fishing activities are the most relevant sources of or sea-based sources of marine litter. The picture on the left is in the Netherlands. You see some skips here that are being used. This picture is in the south of Italy, in Sicily, some of the small islands in the area of Sicily. Also here you see there's really not much that you need for collecting waste from fishing vessels, a few containers, and even sometimes the fishing gear is just put on the quayside. For fishing ports, there's one more slide here. This is in Norway, in the port of Tromsø, close to the Arctic area. So also this is really a large fishing port, but you see there's not much. There's one container here specifically for other types of garbage, and this container is for fishing gear. So in principle, again, I would emphasize port reception facilities do not have to be very complicated or expensive or whatever. And then this is my last slide on port reception facilities, just to give you an example of about the collection of sewage from vessels. This one is in Helsinki, in Finland, where of course these ports in the Baltic area, they have a lot of passenger traffic. What in general what happens there is that the ships, they connect directly to the sewer system of the municipality, so they just pump out the system the sewage directly into the sewage system of the municipality. So okay, this has been my last slide on the first part. Do we go on with the second part immediately, or do we have a very short Q&A?
We can
Maybe
have
I should
Q&A.
Yeah.
Maybe shall we have a couple of minutes Q&A?
Yeah, if there are questions, please go ahead. Oh, I've stopped. No questions, then I shall continue with the second part. Part 2. Okay, now I hope you can see the screen. Is it okay, Ada? Okay, thank you. So this second part, now we go really into port waste management planning. So a slide on waste management planning in general, because in the use of waste management plans is something that has been doing for several years already, mainly in land-based operations. I think the common use of waste management plans started in the 80s and really started to being used in the 90s. So I started my career in the Flemish Waste Agency in 1994, and at that time there was a really large amount of waste management plans that were being developed for all types of waste in municipalities, in industry, in chemical industry. So really, that was the start, I think, for the waste management plan as a tool for improving practices regarding waste. Yeah, these waste management plans obviously play a key role in achieving sustainable waste management. That this has been clearly the experience in land-based operations, but also, and I will come back to that later, also for ships waste and the management of waste in ports. So in a broad sense, a waste management plan provides a framework for compliance with waste policy in general, also target achievement, for stock taking of waste and capacity for managing it. So how much waste, how are we dealing with it, how is it being disposed of, etc. The need to outline the need and future development. So do we have sufficient waste facilities? Do we have sufficient recycling capacity, for example? And also to provide a framework when it comes to information on general waste management policies and technological measures. So these are like the 4 pillars in general for waste management planning, and they can of course be supplemented with optional elements. And I give you three examples here. Waste prevention programs, which is becoming more and more important. Also the link with the circular economy and so on. Organizational aspects and awareness campaigns. And for port waste management planning specifically, there are these, I explained already the MARPOL convention. So for port states, there are requirements to ensure the provision of adequate reception facilities that are, of course, as I said, to meet the needs of the users from large vessels to very small vessels, and without causing undue delay. In general, ports and terminals may also have to meet national, regional, and/or local regulations, as I said. So that can also have an impact on the use and the operation of the reception facilities and the collection of waste. And there can also be an impact of national waste strategies, for example, prevention requirements or specific targets for recycling, for example. So all these elements, they impact ports, they impact waste operators in a port, they impact the collection of waste from ships. So therefore, a port waste management plan really is a useful tool to improve the adequacy of port reception facility. To begin with, a port waste management plan can collect all the relevant information that is linked to the collection and the treatment of waste from ships. So you can, in a port waste management plan, you can bring all the information together. Another issue is that ports are very different. No port is the same to another one. I always use something that Dr. Chris Woodridge from the Cardiff University in the UK said, and I thought it was very, I always remember that. He said, if you have seen one port, you have seen one port, because they are all so different. And of course, this also has a result that the waste management in a port is very different. So you can design a port waste management plan really tailor-made for taking into account the characteristics of your port. And then a third element, which is extremely important, is that when developing a waste management plan, and not only developing, but when implementing also a port waste management plan, it is important to do this in consultation with all the stakeholders, because the stakeholders can be private stakeholders, can be other authorities or whatever, or NGOs, or so they all have very useful and up-to-date information, and that really helps to have a good port waste management plan. Is there a definition? Well, there are several definitions of port waste management plans. When I was writing the guidance document, I found several definitions on the internet, but I think this one is really useful because it really brings together all the key elements. So you see it here, a port waste management plan is a document produced by a port or terminal. So this is important. It's really the key stakeholder that is to draft the port waste management plan, not some ministry somewhere far away. The plan unifies the policy on waste reception facilities for ships. That is clear, I think, and outlines the facilities available at the location. This is an important element, of course, that when you open or read a port waste management plan, one of the key elements is a list or an overview of facilities that are available. This port waste management plan should demonstrate that ports and terminals fulfill all the requirements the legal requirements of local, national, regional, or international regulations. This is also clear that the port can demonstrate that all these requirements are being met. And the facilities and infrastructure are to meet the needs of vessels normally using the port without causing undue delays. This is, of course, the adequacy issue that we also talked about. It's not, again, emphasizing that the MARPOL requirement is to ensure the availability not of facilities, but of adequate facilities. So this adequacy is really a key element. So it should not come as a surprise that the main purpose of a port waste management plan is to improve availability, adequacy, and usage of port reception facilities for waste from ships normally calling the port. The word usage is also very important here. Remember, MARPOL has a requirement for states to ensure the availability of reception facilities, adequate reception facilities, but there's no explicit requirement in MARPOL for ships using these facilities. Of course, there's this implicit requirement because the discharge criteria are very strict. So as if a ship is not allowed to discharge at sea, then as a consequence, of course, it will have to deliver it to a reception facility on shore. But it's not this explicit in MARPOL. So that's why also the usage is very important. And there are some important tools that can enhance the usage of a reception facility. For example, the use of a fee system or the use of an advanced notification system, but I will come back to that in the next part. Yeah, well, in addition to this availability, adequacy, and usage of the reception facility, there are the possibilities to implement the requirements and goals from national waste management strategies, if they are available. Of course, it's not always the case, but the plan can also translate the goals regarding waste management, including the transition towards circular economy, as I already explained, specifically for the practices in the port and for the practices relating to waste from ships. And in a broad sense, also the port waste management plan can work as a guidance document or like a full compendium even for all port users and stakeholders, where you can have all the relevant procedures, all the information, etc., in a guidance doc in this port waste management plan. So really, as the most the broadest way to see this plan, not only as something you have to produce because it's a requirement in your country or in your port, but really as a useful tool for all port users and stakeholders. Yeah, so preferably, and of course, in general, when it comes to port waste management planning and everything we are discussing here and everything which is in the guidance document and so on, this is based on, let's say, general experiences. It's not carved in stone, really. In EU, we already have this experience for more than 20 years because in our directive, it is a requirement. So we have not only in Belgium, but all EU countries, we have a lot of experience with developing and implementing port waste management plans. But of course, this is on a regional approach. In other parts of the world, experiences may be different, but this is in general. So we have seen that port waste management plans really work when they are developed in consultation with all relevant stakeholders. This is really what I also explained, that these input from the stakeholders is essential, really. Also, in our experience, it is useful to have this port waste management plan as a legally binding document, because it helps from different sides, not only from the, let's say, national competent authority to have this plan implemented, but also from the port authority and all stakeholders. You can, as a port authority, put specific regulations in the plan. If it is a legally binding document, then the users have to comply with these elements. And obviously, also, it is important to review the port waste management plan on a structural basis. So we used to have plans every 3 years, or review the plan and reapprove the plan every 3 years. Now this has been extended to 5 years. It's also important to have the information of the port waste management plan accessible for all the port users. As I said, it is really important to have many stakeholders involved there. So it's equally important to have the information available to all these port users, and especially key information, for example, the list of the port reception facilities, the contact details, telephone numbers, email, opening hours, etc. To have this publicly available. So in general, port authorities have the port waste management plan on their website. So it can, and some of the information is specifically put on the website. For example, the contact list of the reception facilities, but also the fee system, for example, or the procedures related to advanced notification or waste delivery receipt, etc. And then a third important element when it comes to port waste management planning is that the plan should actually be relevant for all public stakeholders. And I mean, not only the port authority as such, but all other authorities that are involved with port waste management. For example, the Environmental Protection Agency, policymakers within the Maritime Authority, for example, they can find useful information in the port waste management plan. Ship inspectors, for example. For example, with the ship inspectors, I mean that we have, for example, a system where ships can be exempt from certain requirements. For example, frequent callers, ferries, for example, that call the ports every day or even multiple times per day. Of course, that they have different, they require a different approach than other types of vessels. So also these are elements that can be in the plan and that ship inspectors can use when targeting ships for inspection. Okay, a few slides on the legal and policy framework. The MARPOL Convention, really, that is the main or the most important convention in my view when it comes to environmental protection. So this, as I said, the MARPOL Convention aims at preventing pollution from ships, not only accidental but also operational pollution. It regulates which types of waste from ships can be legally discharged into the sea. I spoke already about garbage, but for oily waste, for example, MARPOL has a requirement in general that I think it is 15 parts per million of oil can be discharged legally as long as the ship is a minimum distance from shore and is sailing at a certain speed and so on, and there should be a treatment system on board, etc. So that is all in MARPOL. Also, there are guidelines and requirements regarding onboard waste management, piping, and etc., and the storage tanks and so on. MARPOL also includes references to enforcement and inspections. And of course, this is said many times, the provision of adequate reception facilities in 5 of the 6 technical annexes of MARPOL. For MARPOL Annex 3, there is no specific requirement regarding port reception facilities. I think this is because if you MARPOL Annex 3 is about hazardous materials that are transported in packaged form. Well, the waste that would be generated from that type of shipping would be like garbage in a way. So this, which is covered by MARPOL Annex 5. MARPOL also has many guidelines linked to it. So there are guidelines, so in a way not legally binding, but they work as a as a guidance document on the implementation of MARPOL. There are also guidelines specifically on adequacy of port reception facilities. And also, I put here the GISIS tool. GISIS is the global integrated shipping information system, if I'm not mistaken. So that is like an internet-based database which has been developed by the IMO, and there you really find a lot of information there, a lot of data regarding shipping. There is information on safety issues, on well, you can go to the GISIS. There is a public area and also an area which is only available for users that have a specific login provided by the Maritime Administration of the country. But also on the open area, there's really a lot of information there. And also important, the GISIS contains a database on port reception facilities. So you can browse the database on port level even, and in this database you can find all the available reception facilities that are available in that port. There's also contact details and so on. So in principle, if you are a ship operator, you can use this GISIS database to check the available reception facilities. And what we also see is that in port waste management plans, ports often refer to this GISIS database. Of course, you need to have the information in that database, and there is a requirement in MARPOL that parties are to communicate the information on available port reception facilities into the GISIS system. So this is really a requirement. It's in the MARPOL convention, and that is really important because it still happens too much that there is no information available about reception facilities in the ports, in the GISIS database. So that is really a pity. And also in the GISIS there is a tool where you can, or it has a list of reports of alleged inadequacies of reception facilities. So it's like some type of name and shame, really. So, and there are flag states that consequently report alleged inadequacies. And of course, it's not always that this report means that there is something wrong with the facility. Sometimes it's also a miscommunication. We had that a few times where, for example, in one of our ports, the ship required a waste delivery, and there was a miscommunication with the ship agent who ordered a reception facility, but for non-hazardous waste. And when the facility went to the ship to collect the waste, they were also delivering some types of hazardous waste. And the reception facility didn't have a permit for the collection of this type of waste. So they said, no, we cannot take this. And then the ship said, oh, this is not adequate, and we will make a report. But this is more, sorry, this is really a miscommunication. But it can be that there are no available facilities. Sorry, I need a drink. Sorry, I've been speaking a lot. And then, yeah, important to know is that the MARPOL Convention does not contain an explicit requirement for the development of port waste management plans. So if you are looking into MARPOL to see what are the requirements for port waste management planning, you will not find any because they are not there. However, of course, in the, let's say, the IMO policy framework, there are several references to port waste management planning, and I noted a few of them here. Some guidelines. There is the manual on port reception facilities, how to do it, and specifically the IMO action plan to address marine plastic litter from ships, which is quite recent, I think 3 or 4 years ago. There is really an explicit reference to consider facilitating the mandatory use of port waste management plans to ensure the provision of adequate waste reception facilities. So clearly, this indicates that within IMO and within the IMO parties and flag states and coastal states and so on, there's an agreement that the use of port waste management plans is facilitating and improving the adequacy issue. On an international level, I also wanted to draw your attention to the Basel Convention. The Basel Convention provides a framework on environmentally sound management of waste, not specifically on waste from ships, but there is also within the Basel Convention a guidance manual on how to improve the sea-land interface to make sure that ship's waste or MARPOL waste, once offloaded from a ship, are managed in an environmentally sound manner. You can find this guidance manual there. I put the link there. So in general, the Basel Convention is focusing on land-based treatment of different types of waste. But this guidance manual on the interface also explicitly refers to the use of port waste management plans. And then in an international event like this, I'm often a bit cautious on referring to EU regulations. But in this case, I think it's really necessary because I already referred to a directive on port reception facilities we have in the EU. Actually, this is the directive 2019/883 is already the second directive on port reception facilities. There was another one in the year 2000. So we have in EU more than 20 years now been implementing regulations on port reception facilities. And this directive aims to protect the marine environment against negative effects from discharges of waste from ships using ports by improving the availability and use of adequate reception facilities. I apologize, there is a frog in my throat. and also the delivery of waste from ships to those facilities. So this directive applies to all ships, irrespective of the flag, and all EU ports. Of course, it's only applicable to EU ports. And then the key requirements of this directive are, to start with, there is a requirement to provide adequate PRF, which is similar to the MARPOL Convention. But in addition, there are several more requirements, really mandatory issues that are sometimes have a background in IMO guidelines, not always. For example, the mandatory delivery of all ships waste before leaving the port. So this is clearly what I explained already in MARPOL. There's no explicit requirement for ships using the facility, but in the EU directive, there is this, it is explicitly there. And I put in principle between brackets, because there is this exemption when a ship has sufficient storage capacity for the waste that will be generated during its next voyage, then there is no need to deliver the waste. For example, when a ship sails from Antwerp to Rotterdam, well, it's only a short trip. So in principle, if the ship has sufficient capacity, storage capacity, then it does not have to deliver the waste in Antwerp, but can do so in Rotterdam. There's also a requirement to use the advanced waste notification and waste delivery receipt. This is something that finds its origin in the MARPOL guidelines, the consolidated guidelines. There's a requirement for having a cost recovery system where the cost for collection and treatment is to be covered by an indirect fee from the ships. So all ships that are calling an EU port have to pay an indirect waste fee. And even if they are not using a reception facility, they still have to pay the fee. This is like an economic incentive. So you can say that, well, if ships have to pay for the waste anyway, they might as well deliver. So that is the idea behind it. There's the possibility of exemptions for frequent callers. I gave you already the example of ferries. There is an enforcement scheme. And also in the new directive, there are a lot of requirements for electronic reporting to exchange data with several databases and so on. And an important requirement also here is that every port needs to have a port waste management plan following consultation with all relevant stakeholders. And it is to be evaluated and approved by the competent authority. So that's why I think it is important to refer to this EU directive. And if we look at the requirements regarding port waste management planning, there are also in this directive, there are elements that are meant to be mandatory. So they are to be put in the plan. And they are an assessment of the need for port reception facilities, considering the needs of the ships that are normally visiting the port. There should be a description of the type and capacity of the port reception facilities, a description of the procedures for the reception and collection of the waste, a description of the cost recovery system, a description of the procedure for reporting alleged inadequacies, a description of the procedure for consultations with all the stakeholders, and finally also an overview of the types and quantities of waste received from ships and handled in the facilities in the previous years. So this is an important piece of information for developing port waste management plans in, of course, especially in EU ports. And then there are some optional elements. Well, you see them here, an overview of the regulatory framework, an identification of a point of contact in the port, that you can call when there's whatever problem related to the delivery or collection of waste from ships. A description of the pre-treatment equipment, if there are any in the port. And then a description of methods for recording the actual use of the reception facility. Now this is also done electronically by using the waste delivery receipts. Also the amounts of waste delivery by ships, that is actually linked to the use of the port reception facility, as I just said. And also the like a general overview of managing the different waste streams in the port. Furthermore, taking a look at the time, okay, I think we are good. Yeah, so as I said, it is really, the directive also provides specific information regarding the ongoing consultations, because from the experience with the previous directive, it has shown that these consultations are really essential. So the directive requires that this consultation should include, I mean, the parties that are to be included are the port users or their representatives, and where appropriate, local competent authorities, the reception facility operators, organizations that are linked to extended producer responsibility obligations. Extended producer responsibility is also a tool that is being used in the EU for several years now. For example, when you buy a dishwasher, then you have to pay a certain waste fee, but in return you can deliver, or the seller of the dishwasher is required to take the old one free of charge. So that is the extended producer responsibility. It works with different types of products, with batteries, cars, yeah, electronic devices, and so on. And finally, also as a stakeholder, you can consult the representatives of civil society when appropriate. Of course, this is for the Port Authority to decide. These consultations should not only be held when the plan is being drafted, but also after the adoption, and so when the plan is being implemented. There is also a clear requirement for having these consultations, especially also when there are significant changes in the operation of the port. It's very useful to consult everyone. The directive also opens the possibility to have port waste management plans developed by several ports in the same geographical region. We have some examples of that. For example, we have the North Sea port, which is actually 3 ports: the port of Ghent in Belgium and the ports of Flushing and Terneuzen in the Netherlands. So there's one port authority in 2 different countries. So there is a possibility to have one port waste management plan for these 3 ports. There is also one in Scandinavia with Copenhagen and Malmö. Also 2 ports in 2 different countries, but one port authority. And then finally, these port waste management plans are to be evaluated and approved. So there's always a competent authority who has to explicitly approve these plans. In Belgium, it is being approved by the Minister of the Environment, and it should be evaluated or reapproved every 5 years. Or also when there are significant changes in the operation of the port. What is a significant change? That is also up to the competent authority to decide. It can be that there is a new dock being opened in a port or a new terminal, which really impacts the general operation of the port. So then you need a new plan. Maybe we can, because we have scheduled a short break now. I can stop with this slide and then we can have a short break. Within the legal and policy framework, I also wanted to refer to this ISO standard on arrangement and management of port reception facilities. I know ISO standards are in a way not really a policy framework, but I think this standard is really useful. This standard was meant to complement the ISO 14001, which is a very common standard used in environmental compliance. But this standard added a specific port component there, so which made it easier for ports or port operators or private companies within a port to get this ISO 14001. It also provides a specific methodology regarding port waste management planning. So that also may be useful to refer to this or take a look into this ISO standard 16304, because you also find some elements of a port waste management plan in that standard, ISO standard. Ada and Tamara, shall we have a short break now, maybe? 10 minutes or 15 minutes?
Yeah,
because
10-15 minutes.
Okay,
yes.
because we are on time and I think we should...
maybe any questions? Maybe there are any questions?
Yeah.
Good suggestion.
There were two questions.
Okay.
One is from Adonis Tafangi from Madagascar. He asked if the port waste management port regulations, is the port waste management plan part of the port regulations, or has it to be separated?
It can work both ways. In Belgium, at least, it is a separate document. But it can be designed that it makes part of port regulations in general, because you have port regulations on many shipping related issues, on ballast water, on degassing, or on terminal operations and whatever. But you can make the port waste management plan as a separate document, but linked to those port regulations. Because if you make the port waste management plan a legally binding document, then in a way it works as a port regulation.
Adonis, has this answered your question?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
There's another one from Carolina Carlos from Timor-Leste. She said, Dear Peter, could you please provide priority action to be taken on how to manage new port facilities? For your information, Tibar Bay Port are just officially run within 8 months. We are planning to set our recycling plan in the facility. What is the most important point to be aware for establishing recycling area away from restricted area before subcontractor come and collect our segregated waste?
That is a really specific question, but what I would answer to that question is that really, because the question is about treating. It's not about the collection of the waste from the ships, but about the treatment options, which is of course very important, because and I have seen this in other ports. For example, if the treatment options like recycling or incinerating or whatever is too far away from the port, then this has an impact also on the cost to begin with, because if you need to drive a few hundred kilometers from outside the port to have the waste being treated, that has an impact on the cost to begin with, and it will also affect operations, because yeah, you will have to spend more efforts on transporting and so on, and that is not really the core business of a reception facility. So I would say that if you are thinking about investing in recycling facilities, then it can be, of course, outside the port area, but not too far. And another element is that it also depends on the volume of the type of waste that is being recycled, and also the municipality or cities that are surrounding the port. Because if we speak about garbage, for example, from ships, well, the garbage from a ship is not that much different from household waste. So if you put these two together, the household waste from the municipality or the city and the garbage from the ship, well, it increases the volume and can improve cost efficiency of the treatment. So those are a few elements to take into account, I would say. And also, I would think that a question like that is something to be addressed in a national or a regional waste management strategy. So not only seeing it for the shipping side, but really seeing it as a general waste management issue.
Has this
I
answered?
hope, yeah, I hope this is a good answer to the question, because it's a rather specific one.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Carolina, has this answered your question?
Loud and clear, merci.
Thank you.
Peter, thank you everyone for being back. Appreciate your interest. Peter, let's continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tamara. Just one thing, I noticed now the questions that were in the chat area. So I missed something from the Senegal question. I think it's a very good one, because it refers to the cleaning of the national seabeds and the seagrass beds. So actually, I just wanted to add that in several countries in Europe, we have a project that is more or less similar. It's called Fishing for Litter. So that is actually a program where fishermen, especially bottom trawlers, they fish on the seabed, and of course they do not only catch fish, but they also bring up litter from the seabed. And we have this program where the fishermen that participate in this program can deliver this waste free of charge. So they are given these big bags, and they can use these big bags when they return to their home port. They can just put it on the shore side, on the quay side, and then the bag is being collected by a reception facility, and this is subsidized by the government. So the type of waste is, I guess, very similar to the type of waste that you are getting with the seagrass beds cleanup. So just wanted to add that we have something more or less similar. There was one more slide in the previous part that I still had to discuss. It's this one. You should be seeing it, I guess. It's about the management of plastic waste from ships. There is a specific section in the guidance manual on the management of plastic waste from ships. In general, it's actually more about, let's say you could broaden this to all types of waste from ships. And the guidance document gives you specific information on the amounts of waste generated on board ships. For example, when you are developing the waste management plan and you are doing the assessment of the need for facilities, then there's not always information available on how much waste actually would be available in your port for collection. And then there are some tools you can apply trying to calculate these amounts of waste, because of course they are impacting the need for the facility, and as a result also the adequacy of the facility. So in the guidance manual there are some some theoretical tools. For example, if you have data from reception facilities and so on, and if you have data from advanced notification schemes, for example, like the one in the IMO consolidated guidelines, then you already have a substantial part of reliant data. But sometimes that is not available when you don't have these data on previous years or collection of waste from ships. Then there are more theoretical tools, and there is one, for example, or I think there are two that I included in the guidance document. The first one is about the types of waste that are being generated on board of a ship, and the let's say the generators, the elements that are influencing the amount of waste on board the ship, because there are sometimes there are treatment options on board, like solidifiers or comminutors or these compactors, or the ship can apply a sustainable purchase policy, for example, when the ship, when supplies are being delivered to the ship, then they can have an agreement with the supplier that they also take back the packaging, which significantly reduces the amount of packaging material on board of the ship. So all these elements, they impact the amount of waste on board of the ship, and also the amount of waste that is being delivered to a reception facility. And there is also in the guidance document information where you can calculate the amount of waste depending on the type of the ship. So you have some examples there, the number of persons on board, and the duration of the voyage, because of course that also impacts the waste generation significantly. So that are tools that can be used for calculating the amount of waste to be delivered in your port. I also think it is important to bear in mind the fishing gear. As I said multiple times already, the fishing gear really is a big problem. Also, the issue of segregation of the garbage. There are recommendations for segregating garbage in the MARPOL Annex 5 implementation guidelines, which, of course, segregation of waste facilitates recycling options. So that is also an important issue. And then finally, I wanted to refer to the waste hierarchy when it comes to treatment options. Final disposal is something that still happens a lot, but is not really preferable, and especially recycling, or as a minimum incineration with energy recovery is more preferable. So yeah, that is what I wanted to say about this last issue. Yeah, in the guidance document, there are also several references to the prevention and recycling options, waste to energy, etc. And also to the issue of passively fished waste, which I also mentioned in when answering the question from Senegal there. So that is more or less similar. So, okay, I will now go to part 3 of the presentation.
Peter, is it
Yes.
possible to widen your
Yes,
presentation? It's
you
not.
don't see it?
It's not showing as it should.
Okay, I will stop
Unless
again
on
then.
my yeah. Sorry.
Just a second. Part 3.
Now it's
It's okay now?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, good. So now this third part actually is, yeah, you can say this is the main part or the most important part from the whole webinar, because now we really dig into the elements of a port waste management plan. So actually what I'm going to do is talk you through the elements that are also in the guidance manual. So, well, yeah, again, as bearing in mind the purpose of a port waste management plan, which is to improve availability, adequacy, and usage of the port reception facility. Also, the key elements of a port waste management plan are also directly linked to the elements that are impacting the availability, adequacy, and usage of the facility. So you have the number and types of the ships that call the port, the waste management requirements of each type of ship. I mean that for a marina or a recreational port, where only yachts are calling, require a different approach than a port with a chemical industry, for example, or dry bulk or cruise. Just of course, this also impacts the type of reception facilities you need in the port, and also the other port's characteristics, the size. A big port is in a way similar to, when it comes to traffic, the amount doesn't make a difference regarding the types of waste, but there is a difference regarding the amount of waste. And then again, it has an impact on cost efficiency of treatment options and etc. Also, yeah, there are some additional considerations to take into account when it comes to waste management planning. For example, technological challenges. The question that was asked previously about a recycling facility, that is something that is to be taken into consideration when developing a waste management plan. For example, also if you have a port in an industrialized area where there's a lot of land-based facilities and industry, in general, there is already a lot of waste management infrastructure in those industrialized areas available, which can also be used in the port. So that can that will also influence the development of a port waste management plan. Also, issues related to the local waste policy will impact the port waste management planning. As I said, local regulations, local strategies, etc., can be issues that also have an effect on waste from ships, and in that case, they should be taken on board of the waste management plan as well. Specific geographic situations. I put here the example of the SIDS, the Small Island Development States, also the Arctic. These are two specific geographic situations where also MARPOL has foreseen possibility to address waste management or provision of port reception facilities on a regional scale. So that is also possible, where not every port needs to have, let's say, the full scale of reception capacity or whatever, but this capacity can be reached on a regional scale. Also, the special areas, for example, they also impact the need for reception facilities, and as a result, also the waste management planning. Now there is, I think from 2025, there is a new special area. Is it the Persian, the Red Sea, or the Persian Sea and the Gulf area there? I think there's a new special area for MARPOL Annex 5. So the countries in that area, the MARPOL, the parties to MARPOL in that area, to MARPOL Annex 5, they will have to look into maybe an increased need for reception facilities, because in special areas, discharge requirements are more strict than in non-special areas, which may lead to a higher need for reception capacity. Specific port characteristics may also impact the need for reception facility. For example, seasonal impacts like cruise. They are general cruise or cruise ships calling the port are linked with the tourist season. So you can have that the case that in winter time, for example, there is less not as big need for reception capacity than during tourist season. And then finally, also the question which or an issue that I already started with in the beginning of the presentation is how do you see the port waste management plan? Do you see it as something that is a requirement, a legal requirement that is to be fulfilled, or do you really see it as a full compendium where all the information is collected, and as a result it can be used like a full guidance document? So this also will have an impact on the development of the plan. And then we go to the elements, because I will make a distinction between really basic elements that, in my view, are to be a part of every port waste management plan, and other elements that can be seen as optional. But we will discuss that later. A first big question also is to who is to draft the port waste management plan? Actually, this can differ from one country to another, but in principle, it has to be decided by the competent national authority. So so the national competent authority is to put it in the national regulatory framework which procedures are related to the development and also approval and renewal of the port waste management plan, and also who is to draft the port waste management plan. And also this can differ. For example, here in Belgium, we have, for the merchant seaports, clearly it is in our regulations that the port authorities are to develop the port waste management plans. But for recreational ports, for example, the system is somewhat different, because we don't always have like a port authority for recreational ports, but it's the yacht clubs, actually. So the organizations that operate the recreational port are to develop a port waste management plan. For fishing ports, again, it's even different. So really, it depends on the national situation, and it has to be made clear and to be decided by the competent national authority. Can be the maritime authority, can be the environmental authority, or the authority responsible for port policy, etc. And also, as I said, in Belgium, for example, we make distinction between the type of the port, because sometimes in a port, and again, this depends on the way how the port is organized, or the within the national organization, how the ports are organized. You can have the case that there are independent entities within a certain port. So, for example, in Belgium, we have several ports where the merchant seaport, there's also a fishing port and a recreational port within the same port area, but each of the three, they are considered to be independent areas. So there are 3 port waste management plans. There is one for the merchant seaport area. There is a separate one for the fishing port, and there's another separate one for the recreational port. So each of these independently managed areas can also be like a terminal, for example. So they can draft their own plans. Now, looking at the specific elements of a port waste management plan, as I said, and we have seen it already several times, that addressing the adequacy of a reception facility, it is a rather complex issue. There are many many elements that impact the adequacy. So also the elements that you have in a port are linked to this adequacy issue are also complex and can be very difficult or different. Yeah, well, we have discussed this. The ports and port users' characteristics can change very much between different ports. Also, the legal framework can be different. The policy ambitions, whether you have specific waste management or recycling targets, for example, and also the existing waste management infrastructure within and in the vicinity of the port. All these elements make it or have an impact on the port waste management plan. So either you can say, if we decide to have this full port waste management plan, to have this compendium of information, of data, of procedures, and etc. Well, it can be a huge task, really, to develop a port waste management like that. It can also be very costly if you have to hire additional staff, etc. So it may not always be the preferred option. And an alternative in that case is to just take out a few essential elements that are really forming a basic port waste management plans. So in the guidance document, you will see that there is clearly a distinction being made between the key elements of a basic port waste management plan and some of the more optional elements. And now I will talk you through the elements, the key elements of a basic port waste management plan. So just an overview here, and then we will go more into detail. So in our view, the basic elements are the purpose of the port waste management plan, the scope of the port waste management plan, an overview of available port waste management plans, port reception facilities. And here you can make, as I also said, you can make a link with the IMO GESIS database. Also the assessment of the need for additional port reception facilities. This is really an important element. And then procedures related to the delivery and the collection, such as the advanced waste notification, the use of waste delivery receipt, and in both documents, the plan should contain information about what information is to be exchanged and who has to do what, etc. Also, the cost recovery system, when you have one in your port, this is really an important element. Stakeholder consultations, it's always the same. I repeat this because it's really so important. And also the reporting of alleged inadequacies is really an important element. So talking about the purpose of the port waste management plan, again, it's to improve availability, adequacy, and usage of the port reception facility for the waste from ships normally calling the port, again, important, in order to protect the marine environment by reducing discharges into the sea of waste from ships, and that also includes cargo residues. It's always useful to clearly have this purpose mentioned in the port waste management plan to make it clear what is this all about and what's the main goal. So its objectives are to reduce illegal discharge of waste from vessels, to comply with legal duties regarding waste management, to consult with all the stakeholders and the users of the port, to prevent the production of waste wherever possible, and to reuse or recycle waste wherever possible. Of course, as I said, this is not carved in stone, so it really depends on your national situation, on the ambition level of the plan, on the available facilities, etc. So, but I think in any case, when developing a port waste management plan, it is important to make sure of its purpose. A second very important element of the plan, in my view, is the scope. It is really essential to make clear, first of all, to which vessels the port waste management applies, and as a result, of course, also to which not. And also the port's geographical and juridical boundaries. When talking about the types of vessels, it is important to mention, because sometimes, I gave the example already from the three different ports, or the three different types of vessels within the same port area, with the merchant seaport, the fishing port, and the recreational port. So if you develop a plan, you have to make clear to which vessels the plan applies. Sometimes specific types of shipping are excluded. Of course, we have the warships, which is very commonly used in all types of IMO regulatory framework. So it makes sense that if warships are excluded, that also in the port waste management plan, it is clear that warships are not included. But sometimes there can be other types of shipping. For example, inland navigation. We have in Western Europe a specific regulation, or it's a convention on waste from inland shipping, with a total different approach, differing from seagoing vessels. So clearly also in the plan, we have made a distinction saying inland navigation is not within the scope of the plan. Ships that are government owned are excluded, for example. So you can make make a tailor-made port waste management plan for your port. And then regarding the port's jurisdiction, sometimes it is there are private terminals or jetties or military infrastructure where you say, okay, these are outside the port's jurisdiction, so we clearly take these elements out of the plan. Another issue sometimes is anchorages. Sometimes vessels are too big to come into a port, and they make use of anchorages. Sometimes the anchorages make part of the port's jurisdiction. So then it is also important to clearly mention this in the scope of the port waste management plan as well. Sometimes anchorages, when they are outside the port jurisdiction, then again, this is important information to have in the plan. Yeah, of course, the overview of available reception facilities, obviously, that should be there in a port waste management plan, a contact list of all the available facilities, a short description and indication of their capacity. And again, you can use the KISIS database for this, but it's not necessary. And then also, if there are specific issues related to the availability of the facility, for example, pumping capacity or opening hours or whatever can be essential or necessary information, then this is to be put in the overview as well. And then linked to the information of available reception facilities, there's also the assessment of the need for additional reception facilities, or even you can call it differently, an assessment of the adequacy of the existing facilities. That is really an important element there. Yeah, I explained this a little bit already when speaking about the plastic waste management. So when you an assessment like this is not easy. It's a rather difficult exercise because you don't always have the information necessary to be able to do this assessment. So you can use information on waste collection and treatment from previous years, for example. If you don't have it, you can ask the waste contractors themselves whether they have useful data. In many countries, port or waste infrastructure operators in general, not only ship, of course, or port linked, but in general, they have a requirement to keep like a register with information. So that can be used with in the register. There is the information about waste collection, how much, what type of waste, the dates, etc. So that that can be used. And as said, if this is not available, you can always have the theoretical models, which I also refer to based on the ship types, the cruise, the onboard treatment options, and voyage duration. But these theoretical models are sometimes, let's say, not that reliable or not that specific. But it still, if nothing else is available, then they can be useful. And then also, as I already mentioned, the special area. If your port is in a special area for either one of the annexes, 1, 4, 5, or 6, that can have an impact on the availability or on the need for reception facility. Another element, or should I say elements, that are important in a basic port waste management plan are all the procedures that are related to the delivery and collection. As mentioned already, the advanced waste notification is something that is important. This is in the consolidated guidelines of the IMO, and there you have a format which information is necessary. And also in the plan, then you have to provide information about the timing. When does a ship or a ship agent need to notify this information? How is it to be done? Is it to be done with a fax or electronically or email or whatever? So that should also be specified in the plan. Of course, who is to do it, to whom. In some cases, for example, this advanced waste notification is to be sent to the harbor master's office, but in other cases it can be the environmental department or whatever. It really depends. And actually also the how this advanced waste notification is being used in some ports, this is only indicative. It works like some kind of information from the ship to the port. But in other ports, an advanced notification already works as a request for collection. So when an advanced waste notification is received, then you have already the information from the ship about which types of waste the ship has on board, how much waste the ship has on board, and how much the ship wants to deliver to the reception facility. So, and that is important information to organize the collection of the waste from the ship. And also the timing is important in this case. According to the IMO consolidated guidelines, I think there's a reference to at least 24 hours before the ship calls the port, so that the reception facility has the opportunity to organize the collection. And in the EU directive, for example, there's really the deadline is 24 hours before calling the port. And then the same works for the waste delivery receipt. This is also based on the IMO consolidated guidelines. There you have the information about the exact collection of the ship. So how much and which types of waste did the ship deliver to the reception facility. And then in the port waste management plan, it is again to specify which format is to be used, well, in general, it is the reception facility who has to complete the form, and how it is to be transferred to who is collecting the information. Can be the port authority again, can be the environmental department, can be both. And when is this to be transferred? In Europe, it's not specified really, because I mean, it's not specified when this waste delivery receipt has to be transferred, because it depends on in most cases the waste is going to a treatment or to a recycling facility where they segregate the waste in different types, and then it depends on when this segregation is being done, and so it can take a few days, even sometimes a week, before this information is available. And then a third, let's say, procedure, which is a key element in the plan, of course, when it is available or when it is being used in the port, is the cost recovery system. It is mentioned when it comes to the adequacy issues that the cost for waste delivery can work as a disincentive. So an indirect cost recovery system can take away the economic advantage of discharging into the sea. That's what I also explained earlier. If a ship has to pay a fee anyway, even if it doesn't use the facility, then Well, in most cases, the mindset is that that the ship delivers anyway, so that is a good thing. Also, you can say that by using this indirect fee system, that the cost for providing a port reception facility and operating the reception facility is divided over all the port users. So it's really only a small amount of the it's not a big part of the total cost for the ship calling a port. If you look at the indirect waste fee, it's only a very small percentage of the total cost for a ship calling the port. So, and if in return there are adequate facilities and there's a good service level and so on, then really ships will use the facilities. We have seen this in EU since the beginning of the previous directive. You see here that the graph here on the right, this is the volume of waste from ships that is being delivered in the three major ports in Belgium. And you see we started actually, so the first EU directive was in 2000 and member states had 2 years time to implement it. So let's say that we started to have relevant data in 2004, and you can see that the amount of waste that was delivered has increased significantly over the following years. And then there was a short drop down in 2008, 2009 due to the global financial crisis, but then it went up again. And then there was another drop down in 2015, 2016, but you can see that this is the blue lines here are MARPOL Annex 1 waste, so oily waste, liquid oily waste, sludge and bilges. And this drop down was due to more strict fuel requirements in the North Sea. And that, as a result, more ships used marine gas oil and diesel, and they didn't generate as much sludge anymore. So this also affected the delivery, of course, to port reception facilities of MARPOL Annex 1. But for the other annexes, it still went up. So clearly it's, and also audits in EU member states clearly indicated that this cost recovery system has impacted the delivery. And also when there is more waste, you can say as a port, but we don't want this waste because it's really difficult for us and it's an extra cost. But sometimes more waste being delivered is being seen as a business opportunity for private waste contractors. And in those cases, it will be the private companies that will invest in facilities and collection capacity. So it is not for the Port Authority or the national authority to do it. So that may be also something to bear in mind. And then the stakeholder consultations, as said, it is really a key success factor because a constructive dialogue between the Port Authority or whoever drafts the Port Waste Management Plan and all the relevant stakeholders is really crucial. And not only during the development of the plan, but equally important during the implementation. And then the Port Waste Management Plan can include procedures organizing these stakeholder consultations. For example, in our ports, we have this requirement in the plan that all stakeholders should be consulted during a meeting, so a physical meeting, at least 3 times per year. So, and it really turned out that these meetings are useful. So who is at these meetings? It's the competent national authority. In our case, it's the environmental agency. It's the port authorities. It's the waste collectors, the reception facilities, And also the shipping inspectorate is always at those meetings. So this is, and there's really an open discussion always. So it really has turned out to be essential really in the success of the whole waste management system. Looking at the time. Okay. Nearly there. And then finally, also in the basic port waste management plan, it is important to include a system for reporting alleged inadequacies, because it's really important to have this information, because as a port authority, sometimes you don't always know about inadequacies, and it is only being highlighted or signaled when a ship is reporting something that may not be correct or may not be fully in line with the requirements. So the IMO has also foreseen in the consolidated guidance a format for reporting alleged inadequacies. And it is useful to embed a procedure for this in the port waste management plan. Normally in let's say the IMO system, if a ship is having difficulties when delivering waste to a reception facility, they complete the form, the IMO form, they send it to their flag state. The flag state sends the information to the IMO secretariat, and then the IMO secretariat forwards this report to the coast state or the port state. And then it is up to the port state to investigate this, to see what was exactly the problem, what went wrong, etc. And then the port state also has the possibility to provide an answer to the IMO secretariat. And then this information is also being completed in the GISIS database, where you have a section on reports of alleged inadequacies, and then you have there all the information, including the response of the port state. So it is really useful also to make a reference to this procedure in the port waste management plan. And in addition, as a port authority, for example, you can add also a direct or a possibility to directly report this alleged inadequacy to the port authority. Although we have this included in the plan, but we never had a ship reporting directly to the port authority a problem with the reception facilities or a non-adequacy of the reception facilities. This may be, of course, that this may mean that our reception facilities all are fully adequate. However, I think that the reason for it is that ships or ships agents are not very keen on complaining directly to the port authority in the port they are working in on a daily basis. But still, it is useful to have it in the plan. And then there are some so-called optional elements of a port waste management plan. I did not provide any specific information in this presentation, but it's all in the guidance document. For example, a brief description of the port is something that is useful in the plan, especially when the plan is being used as a compendium with all the information available. An overview of definitions. I had some doubts whether this could be even a basic element or an essential element in a basic plan. But again, this depends on the national situation or the local situation. For example, definitions can be clarifying ship types or waste types, Or for example, there's also in the another bullet there on exemptions, where ships, for example, ferries or other ships that are in a strict schedule, that are frequently calling your port, you can have exemptions for those types of ships. Well, it can be useful to include in the definitions, for example, what is a frequent caller? In EU, it is a ship that is calling the same port at least once every 2 weeks. But you can make it differently. You can say that this a frequent caller is a ship that calls or is to call your port at least 1 time a week, for example. So therefore, for issues like that, it may be useful to have some definitions there, which in order to avoid discussion afterwards when implementing the plan. Also, an overview of the regulatory framework may be useful in the plan, because not every stakeholder is aware of all the legal requirements related to waste from ships, because there are different angles there. You have the maritime regulatory framework and MARPOL and all that is linked to that. You also have land-based regulatory framework for waste management. How is waste to be treated? Do you need specific permits? How about collection and transporting the waste? You need identification forms, etc., etc. So then when you put all this in your plan, and you don't need to put all the legal text in the plan, because then sometimes you end up with over 100 pages, and that's not necessary, of course, but at least you can include a reference to where you can find this information about the regulations. Some references to record keeping may be useful. As said, reception facilities, it's as a port authority, it's important to have that you have the relevant and reliant information about how much waste is being collected and so on, and which types of waste. So you can put in the plan some requirements for the waste contractors, that they do a good record keeping, that they have registers and record books and so on, in order to be able to use this information, not only for statistics, but really for assessing the adequacy of the facilities. Exemptions, if you apply such a scheme, then of course it makes sense to put it in the plan. And finally, also the monitoring and enforcement. The monitoring, well, enforcement is of course very specific, depends also on the operation of the port authority, because sometimes port authorities are more privately oriented, and enforcement may not always be, let's say, high on the agenda, but in other cases, the port authorities can do a lot of enforcement, or also have an important task when it comes to enforcement. And then this should also be referred in the plan. And monitoring, that is more to do with having the correct information also. For example, in our ports, we have everything is being done electronically, so there's no paperwork being exchanged and so on. And then it is important to have this in the plan. Also, who has to do what, who is to report information to which database, etc. So clearly, again, this is the last slide of this third part. Again, I would like to repeat that this is not carved in stone. This is not strict to be applied strictly. This is all information that you can process and digest, and pick out the things that are useful in your port. So this is the end of part 3. We are still on track, I think. I only have one more presentation, which is rather short compared to the previous ones. So I suggest that I go on with this last part. and then we should have plenty of time for questions and answers. If that is okay, I will continue.
Yes, please, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is it again?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so one last effort also for the translators. Thank you for being so patient with me. So there are a few more issues I would like to point out. So one of them is I call it flanking policy measures. What I mean is that waste from ships is not only to be seen as a very specific waste type of waste or waste stream that is to be kept separate from all other waste management issues. No, it's rather the contrary. It is really important to integrate the management of waste from ships in a wider waste management strategy. And also in the guidance document, there are some elements addressing this. For example, when it comes to waste prevention and minimization, for ships, it's not always simple to prevent or minimize waste because they don't always have the storage capacity, for example, to separate different types of waste. They are, when supplies are being delivered, they don't always have an impact on the packaging, the waste package, and the waste from packaging that comes from that, etc. But still, there are some possibilities, and then they should be or can be addressed in the plan as well. Also, the waste hierarchy, that is also something that in general is included in national waste management strategies. So if they exist in your country, then it's also something to be taken into account when developing a port waste management plan. Addressing both ship and land generated waste. I also referred to this when answering the question from the first question. I can't remember where was it, Madagascar. So if you are if you want to invest in a recycling facility or in an incinerator, for example, then the both land-based and ship-generated waste really are to be put together because they will increase the volume. They will facilitate cost-efficient treatment of waste. So that is also here an important issue. Then also cooperation between ports for the provision of reception facilities. That's what I said when referring to the small island development states, for example, or the ports in the Arctic, that it's not always, also for smaller ports, for example, it's not always necessary to invest in waste collection capacity for all types of waste. I've seen it in the Caribbean, for example. There is a waste management, a regional waste management strategy where for cruise vessels, because they mainly, or in general, they have one home port where they go to, and then it's not always necessary to have full capacity in all the other ports that are on the ship's route. So this is something to take into account, and in that case, it may be useful to cooperate between the ports when developing a port waste management plan. The issue of circular economy, that in a way is linked to the waste hierarchy and the waste prevention and minimization issue as well. So Circular economy is something that is on, I think, every competent or environmental authorities' agenda these days. So more and more countries are focusing on circular economy, are developing strategies facilitating circular economy, and in that case, it may be useful to refer to it in the port waste management plan as well. And then finally, incentivizing the segregated delivery of waste. As said, segregating waste in general improves options for recycling. MARPOL does not have a strict requirement for segregating waste, although in the guidelines, in the MARPOL Annex 5 implementation guidelines, there is a reference to segregating different types of waste. So, and even though it's not a strict requirement, in our ports, we still see that more and more ships are segregating their waste. And then but they don't always segregate it in the same way. So some ship operators, they segregate several types of waste, and then other ship operators other types of waste. So it may be useful to streamline this in your port, and then the port waste management plan may also be a useful tool. And then finally, regional port waste management plans. I also referred to that already. Another issue that I also touched upon briefly is the approval and review issue. As said, it is preferable actually to make the plan a legally binding document, because in that case, it works also as some kind of a port regulation. That also referred to one of the questions being asked. It can be optional, because it depends on how it is organized in your country. It depends on the national regulatory framework. It can also depend on the type and size of the port. For example, if you Belgium is only a small country, but in other countries which are really big, with hundreds or thousands of ports, from big ones to the very small ones, maybe you can set up some kind of a threshold level where you say that ports bigger than a minimum size are to have a port waste management plan, which should be formally approved by whoever, competent authority or the minister or whatever. And ports that are below the threshold level, small ports or even recreational ports or whatever, it all depends. You can say they are to develop a port waste management plan, but it should not be formally approved, because of course, if you have thousands of recreational ports, it's a lot of work for the administration as well, and you don't always have the resources for that. So for example, in Sweden, in Scandinavia, they have this requirement that small ports or jetties with only a few vessels, for example, they need to have the plan available for inspection, but it's not formally approved. And then who is to approve it? It can be the maritime authority, can be the environmental authority. Again, this is up to the national situation. And then if it is formally approved, then in principle, there's also to be a revision or a reapproval process of the plan. So the assessment whether the plan is being implemented effectively, well, in general, this is an ongoing process. It's not something you do after 3 or 4 years. And also in this case, the stakeholder consultation process is extremely important. Of course, it makes sense that the port waste management plan is to be kept up to date. So also here, if there are significant changes, then the port waste management plan is to be updated. Also, for example, the tariffs, if I mean the waste fee, referring to the cost recovery system. In general, these indirect fees are to be reviewed on a yearly basis. So you should not always put it in the plan, but at least in an annex to the plan, because depending on the formal approval process, it may be difficult it may be a quite heavy administrative process. But if it is in an annex, sometimes annexes can be amended rather easily. So then it may be useful to put it in an annex. And then, yeah, when to do this review? Well, at least I would say every 3 to 5 years. Yeah, then I have in the guidance document also made a distinction between different types of ports, and you can use different models. For example, as said, these ports characteristics, they can change very much between ports, and they also impact the need for reception facilities, and as a result also impact the development of the plans. We in Belgium, and I see this in other countries as well, made distinction between 4 types of ports, being the merchant seaports, the passenger and cruise ports, the fishing ports, and then finally the recreational ports and marinas. So what we have done is we developed these basic formats for the port waste management plan, and for each type of port they all use the same model, so to speak. And here you find an overview of the elements that are being used in each of these models. So for merchant seaports, for example, well, it makes sense that most of the issues that I referred to in the basic port waste management plans are applicable to merchant seaports. The only exemption that I used here was the cost recovery system, because not every port applies a cost recovery system. But I would say that all the other issues, the purpose, the scope, is really important. The available reception facilities, of course, that is one of the most important elements, together with the assessment. Advanced waste notification and waste delivery receipt I put there as well, because they are based on IMO guidelines. So therefore, I think for merchant seaports, it's also important. And then stakeholder consultations, that is actually for each type of port very important. Also, reporting of alleged inadequacies. Yeah, maybe for a marina or a fishing port, they are a little bit less important than in merchant seaports and cruise ports. But again, here also they are based on an IMO guideline, so I kept them in there. Other ports, for example, going to the other side of the spectrum, the marinas. Of course, advanced notification is something that is not being used in marinas. The same goes for waste delivery receipts, because in general, the reception facilities in recreational ports are like just unmanned skips and waste containers and so on. So there is no waste delivery receipt, so that is something that's not applicable. The same goes for fishing ports, because in our experience, fishing vessels, they have a home port which they go to most of the time on a daily or weekly basis. Also there, it is not always the advanced waste notification and the waste receipt are not always applied. And then the scope of the port waste management plan, also for the marina, it's optional. because in general in a marina it's very clear what the scope is. It's the yacht club and recreational vessels. I think we are nearly there. Yeah, just 2 more slides. This, of course, probably you already have it, but here you have the link to the web page where you can download the guidance document on port waste management plan. It's on the GloLitter website. And then one more thing, just as an example, in Belgian seaports, how did we do it with waste from ships? Well, as said, we identified 4 target groups: merchant seaports, fishing ports, marinas, and also inland navigation, inland terminals. But then I mean inland terminals where seagoing vessels are calling. But there's also a separate plan for inland navigation, which is under a total different scheme. So we have made the tailor-made port waste management plans. As I said, we have these models that each of the ports can use. There are separate consultation fora. So there is one with the merchant seaports that we meet at least 3 times per year. But we also have separate consultation moments with the fishing ports, also with the marinas, and not exactly with the inland terminals, but with the Inland Waterways Authority. So we see them also on almost on a weekly basis. Yeah, we have also an incentive-based fee system. This means that every ship calling a port pays a fee. This accounts for all types of ports, from the largest merchant seaports to small recreational ports even. Of course, the fee differs. And then there's a full indirect fee for the cost related to the collection and the treatment of garbage. So if the waste fee is, there is a distinction between oily waste and garbage, and the fee fully covers the collection of the garbage. So there is no fee or no cost linked to the volume of the waste. There's no limit on the volume. And then there is a fully web-based electronic reporting scheme, as I also mentioned. So there's no paperwork for the stakeholders involved. As a result, we do have accurate statistics for several years now, and also automated cost checks, especially in the large ports, because, for example, the Port of Antwerp, there are 15,000 ship calls per year. It's not possible to do this on a case by case these checks. So they are also integrated in the database. So if there is, for example, if the ship notifies in advance that it wants to deliver 10 cubic meters of plastic waste, and based on so that goes into the data system, and also the waste delivery receipt goes into the data system from the reception facility. And if there is a difference more than, it's 10%, I guess, or 15% between what the ship has notified and between what the port reception facility has notified, there is an automatic alarm being sent out to the port authority, so they can see what is the problem. Why did the ship deliver less waste than it has previously indicated? Sometimes it can be that it's just a typo or whatever, but sometimes there's also a need for an inspection, really. This is my last slide, actually. So you have my contact details here as well. In case if you would have additional questions, we have now time for question and answers, of course, but if tomorrow maybe, or next week or next month, whenever you have an additional question, you can always contact me, and hopefully I can answer your question. Okay. Tamara, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Peter. As always, very interesting and informative sessions that you run. I would suggest we take questions now. I see some questions in the chat. Ada, if you could read out the questions,
Yes.
and Peter will try to answer them, and then let's see how it goes. And I have a few remarks to make. Thank you.
So Ninken van der Broek asked if you could please provide some examples of cost recovery systems for fishing ports. Is this also done on the basis of indirect fee covering recovered slash waste nets?
Yes, I see the question. Yes, it is actually on a same way with an indirect fee. But for the garbage, we have a system with indirect fees. In Belgian fishing ports, we have a system where there's the Flemish Fishing Cooperative. So it's like a corporation of fishermen, and they organize waste collection from fishing vessels. So it's for the large part, it's on a voluntary basis. So they organized a system with a yearly fee. So it's not every time the ship calls the port, because as said, fishing vessels, they have a different way. They have a home port most of the time. They go there on a daily or on a weekly basis. So this is then organized on a yearly fee, depending also on the size of the vessel. So we have made distinction between small fishing vessels, like the coast trawlers, which go for shrimp and so on, and the large fishing vessels. So they pay a yearly fee, and in return for that fee, if the ship calls the port, then sorry, I got a little bit distracted. Then in return for that fee, they can deliver the fishing gear or the garbage in general free of charge. So it is organized by this corporation. For oily waste, it's different. This is outside the scope of the fee system. So if a fishing vessel wants to deliver oily waste, then the fishing cooperative can facilitate the collection, but there is a direct fee to be paid by the fishing vessel to the reception facility for the oily waste. But for the garbage, it's all included in 100% indirect fee, but on a yearly basis. And for this is for, let's say, 95% of the Belgian fishing fleet. For the 5% which are not included in this system, I must say we are still negotiating how to address these, because according to the EU directive, also these ships have to pay this indirect fee. But it's rather complicated, and I must say we are still in the process of organizing this. I hope this is an answer to your question.
Ja, absoluut. Dank u.
Ah, oké. Graag gedaan.
Any other question? Please feel free to raise your hand. You have this opportunity to unmute yourself and raise your hand, please. There's no more questions. There are questions about the PowerPoint slides. They have been already in the chat. Ada sent in a chat there are 4 sections as Peter presented, so 4 different presentations, both in English and French. But they will also be sent by email. Ada will send later by email. So these slides are available in 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. So you'll have access to them. And you'll also have access to this recording, if you like to refer back to it. Any questions before we start closing? No, okay, excellent. That was a Peter. That apparently was very clear presentations, but
it's a lot to digest also.
I know, but it's very interesting. And what I want to mention is that tomorrow we'll have another session, but it will be a different time. It will be from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. British time, so Greenwich time. And that will be interpreted to Spanish, just to meet the time zone of our Spanish speaking countries, but also English speakers, please welcome, well, French speakers, please welcome to join again. You're very welcome to join as many sessions as you like, but it is the same content. That will be also recorded for the future reference. What I wanted to say is these are webinars, meetings, trainings that give you an introduction. What is the port waste management plan all about? What you need to consider, the details, and Peter very well walked us through the main components and requirements. Now, GloLitter design has opportunity for the countries to receive support to develop their national port waste management plans. And next year, we under the scope of GloLitter, we are able to select 5 countries that we will support with developing port waste management plan. And Peter kindly will lead that initiative, but it will be next year and most probably in 2025. So 5 in total for now. That's what our budget and scope allows, and timing as well. And the idea will be with for Peter and IMO and FAO work together with national authorities to go deeper into what's required for the port waste management plan, how to do it, and actually customize it for the requirements of the country and that specific port. That will be forthcoming next year. And that's why it was important to have our counterparts and stakeholders from ports and shipping and fisheries authority to have this introductory sessions with Peter. That's it for me. I would appreciate. I really appreciate your timing, Peter. Of course, as always, pleasure to listen to your sessions. Our countries, our partnering countries, our lead partner countries for joining this session. As always, we look forward to partnering with you on different topics related to sea-based marine plastic litter. Ada, appreciate your support to run this session smoothly. And very important, thank you our interpreters. I hope it went well. I was listening, trying to understand what I can understand. It went very well. And I look forward to meeting you again tomorrow and new participants as well. Any final comments, Peter?
Thank you from my side as well, and especially also the interpreters for bearing with me, and also to the participants for your interest. And I wish you all good luck with the development of port waste management plans.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.